Welcome back, friends. Let's get started on our drawing. I have my drawing pencil here, and I'm just going to begin on the right side of the paper, drawing and mapping out my picture before we begin painting. In this part, you can have a lot of liberty to change or make it as you want it, or you can go ahead and just follow what I'm doing here and all the lines. But I will also have a link to a template for this drawing. If you click on my Patreon membership, which is in the description, I have a free membership that will also be for all my templates and things like that. Or you can join my paid membership and you can get a lot more than just that. Go ahead and check those things out if you're interested. Otherwise, just draw it by hand here, whichever you choose to do. I'm just drawing some of the flowers, the leaves, some of the oranges. In keeping with our inspiration piece from Hobby Lobby, I'm keeping the lines and the shapes very simple, very clean lines. So especially for these leaves here, just really simple lines. Of course, with that line down the middle as well, and then layering some of those leaves to add a little bit of depth. I'm really freehanding that orange there, so I don't make a perfectly round object or trace anything like that. It's better if you just have more of a free-handed and not perfect shape of an orange there. And I'm just going to extend this branch off the edge. Of course, it's going to be thicker at the edge of the paper and get thinner towards where the orange is. And then just add some of those leaves there at the very end of the branch. And also work on varying the sizes of the leaves. When I'm making my flowers, if you've noticed, I also want to make sure I'm just keeping it very simple. I'm not layering petals upon each other. I'm really just doing the 4-petaled flower there. Let's go ahead and start our painting portion of this video. I'm going to start by flipping my paper over and getting it really wet. I'm using my hockey brush or whatever larger brush you have. Soak it down. And the reason I'm doing this is because it kind of helps the paper from buckling too much and from bowing and creating puddles of water. So by equalizing the water on the back and the front, it kind of keeps the paper from doing too much of that. This is in place of stretching. I'm not stretching my paper. I don't usually do that. This is just a quicker method and it works really well. So I'm just kind of wetting down almost all the areas here on my painting. I'm kind of avoiding where the flowers are because in just a second here, I'm going to go ahead and mask those flowers out, making sure to keep them white. I have this really cool masking pen. Of course, I'm going to put the link in the description. It's pretty cool. You do not have to use this at all. Most of my paintings, I don't use masking fluid, but I really just wanted to experiment with this one and see how much it helped me. So I'm just blocking out those areas. If you don't want to do this part, just skip this and just make sure to avoid painting in the flowers as we're going to keep those white. Let's go ahead and mix up some of our green paint for our leaves. I'm mixing up 2 shades of green here. I'm really going to get a lot of water, almost like a wet on wet first here. I really like that look for leaves. By all means, you can just paint them directly wet on dry, which I'm partially doing, but then I'm also partially painting just the plain water, and then I'm putting more pigment onto that. I really like the different patterns that happen when you kind of just let it go. So just have fun here, exploring different ways of painting leaves. Explore the wet on wet and dropping pigment in, having some areas darker and some lighter, having more pigment, less pigment. I'm also adding a tiny bit of yellow, different yellow ochre to this particular green as well. So you can introduce other colors into your greens to give a variety of different tones to your leaves. Using a bit of a smaller brush here, a round, about 3 sized brush. Earlier, I was using a round 8, and I really like the round brushes for this particular painting because it allows you to get in there in an angle. So for this smaller brush, I'm going to go ahead and do these branches, and for the branches I'm combining a couple of colors here. I have a raw umber, which is a very dark brown, and then I'm also combining that with some neutral tint and Payne's gray. Those are the deepest, darkest colors that I have without using the black. I do not use black in my paintings hardly ever. Neutral tint is the closest thing to black, but I'm starting light and I'm working dark here. So starting with the browns, the raw umber, and then I'm working into the darker neutral tint, adding that into the brown. This gives a really nice contrast in this painting. Go ahead and paint right there where the orange and the stem intersect, there on the top of the orange. Kind of blossoms out there. So we're ready to do our oranges. I'm mixing up a couple different oranges here. I have a golden color and then a cadmium orange. And I think it's important for the oranges to have a variety of different shades of orange. So as we go, we're going to be mixing different colors into those variations of orange. And I like the cadmium orange. It's a bit more of a deeper orange. And then the golden is obviously more of a lighter orange. Just going to go ahead and do a variety of techniques here. So we're going to use the wet on dry, but there's also going to be a lot of portions where I'm going to do wet on wet as well. Now remember, when you're doing watercolor, you really just want to start off light and then you're going to go darker as you progress. So I'm really starting off with a watered down shade here of this golden orange. Getting a light wash in here. And I'm going ahead and throwing in some of this really deep orange, which for my palette is called Titans. And with this Titans, I'm using more of a wet on wet technique for this. So I'm just dropping the pigment in, letting it bleed, and seeing what it does. And I think the main thing for painting fruit or anything that is supposed to be more realistic looking in nature is making sure there's variation and that there's lights and darks and that it's not all just one block of color here. I'm going to go ahead and blot some of that orange off as well, just to have an area of the orange that is going to have more of a highlight to it. Again, I'm just gonna pull some of the paint off of here with a clean dry brush to create that highlight over there on the left side after I've already painted everything in, just to make sure we have a variation of tone and color in here. Okay, so here I've added a bit of burnt sienna into my orange mixture here. And this is just going to deepen the orange. It's going to create more of a brown orange for some of those bottom areas where I'm trying to get a little more depth of color here. I'm pulling a little bit more of that Titan's orange in here, darken it up just even more, make it a tad more orange. And again, this part is very just make it how you want it kind of thing. And I'm just kind of going back in, smoothing out some of the edges and making sure the lines are, I'm comfortable with those, and the color, blotting any areas that need blotting. So just have fun with the rest of this here for a few minutes. If you've made it this far into the video, I'd like to invite you, if you love painting and you really enjoy it, it's nice and relaxing for you, please consider checking out my Patreon. I have an artist membership group where we do a weekly art journaling scripture class. So this is a faith-based group, but we do scripture and art together, and we combine those with typography every single week. On Tuesday, we have a lot of fun together. We do art challenges, we do tutorials every month. So please consider checking that out if that sounds like a community you could be interested in joining. The link is in the description. Boy, this can be a tricky spot here when you have two wet things touching and starting to bleed together, and that's not something I want here. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. So I'm just really blotting here on the green leaf, and then as it keeps filling, I'm blotting again and I'm repainting. And if this keeps happening to you, you can just continue to blot and then repaint later after everything is dry there on the leaf. You can add more water and play with it again. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and begin on the background. I'm really just taking just a clean wet brush with clean water, and we're going to do a wet on wet effect here on the background. I'm actually switching to my 1-inch hockey brush, but you can use whatever brush you have that you feel comfortable. I'm not painting super close to the edge of what I have going on here. I'm trying to keep it kind of far from there. And then I'm using a mixture that I made up, which is very similar to the oranges. So I have a combination of some orange. I have a hint of some red in there, kind of a rosy red, and some of that yellow ochre. So it's a little bit more of an orangey red color. And it's very, very light because we did that wet on wet there. So I'm really just kind of dabbing it on in certain places, more just for an overall color here. Now, like I said, for this video, I'm copying or inspired by this piece of art from Hobby Lobby that I really, really enjoyed. And so I'm not doing a super solid color, but I'm trying to match that color as close as I can for this one. Okay, I'm back to mixing up some more green tones here. I've got that olive green, and then I'm mixing it with a slightly darker shade of green here. I'm just going to deepen up a few areas in the leaves here where I want a little bit more contrast, putting them slightly along the edges, and then adding water back into that to let it kind of float into the remainder of the leaf. You can also go ahead, if you like the style of adding a line down the center of the leaf. That's another option here. I was kind of testing it out to see if that's what I wanted to do. Ended up not continuing to do that with all those leaves. So just kind of painted the overall leaf a lot darker, but by all means, paint a line down into the center of the leaf if that's the look that you like. Okay, for the last part here, I have my little eraser, my pen eraser, which I love. And we're going to use that eraser to remove the masking fluid. Sometimes you can use your fingernail. I found it very challenging, so I'm using this eraser here. Now, overall, my experience with this is that in certain parts it did start to peel up the paper. So I was not loving that. I also experimented later with heating it up with the hairdryer just a bit, and it did come off easier. So, my recommendation to you is to use a hairdryer first before you take all that off. And this should take you a few minutes. Remove all that masking fluid off of there. And then we're going to do a little bit more fine painting on those flowers. So, get out your smallest line brush that you have. And we're just going to use sort of an orange, that orange color that we made that has a little bit of the brown mixed into it. We're just going to paint a few little center lines for our blossoms that we have here. And here we go. We are at the end of our painting. I'm just adding a few little touch-ups here, but overall it is complete. I really hope that y'all enjoyed the painting today, and I'd love to know how it went for you. Let me know how your painting turned out. Let me know if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next tutorial. Bye, guys.